And I find the old system of developmental so interesting, especially because I really, again, as an outsider looking in for the most part, I love Triple H's vision of what he wants to do. You know, the
Mm,
global localization, the various schools all over, because in a way, it's almost replicating the territory system
mm.
on a grander scale in theory. And we'll see how it turns out if everything will work out that way. You know, you never know in professional wrestling; everything's chaotic. Did you like the go like because you ended up going to several different places at least temporarily, did you
Mhm.
like the idea of like bouncing around, learning from these people here, learning from these people here, this is a different style presentation than over here, like did you enjoy that, or do you like, you know, the more rigid structure of learn this way only? Because to me, I would think you'd prefer the first, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, uh, no, I'd prefer to learn as many styles as I could. I encourage students, well, my students, but I guess any student that might be listening, um, you can only get so good, like you're going to get better and better every match, every practice. But when you see that those increments are getting smaller and smaller, the increases are ever so slight, it's time to pick up a move. If you live in Chicago, maybe it's time to, you know, move to Tennessee or move to Philly. Maybe it's time to try to get to Japan or Mexico. But I think if you're progress, you're starting to plateau, it's time to bounce.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And again, with the global localization thing that Triple H always talks about, and I think it was starting to happen before, you know, the world shut down and everything happened.
Mm,
You know, the idea of like obviously different people on different levels, but a person who always sprang to mind for it was like Oni Lorcan, right? He
mm,
had a certain level on NXT. Then he goes to 205 Live and he starts building a bigger name because he's being positioned higher on 205 Live. He can work differently with different people. And
mm,
then maybe he'll move to NXT UK for 6 months or a year. And now suddenly he's a bigger spot there. Then
mm,
when he goes back to NXT, he has the reputation from the other two shows. And that's just a random example. But
mm.
I think like it can work both from the sense of where you're talking about where developing, but also just raising somebody's stock, right? Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know what they're gonna do. I know that there's been a lot of talk of all sorts of whether having a PC in Shanghai or Dubai or who knows where.
Mm-hmm.
I know they've talked about these things, and they've done a lot of things that they've talked about, but all these things take a lot of time. And then in between, the company gets sold
Yeah.
and the world gets shut down, and so I think those probably put a few bumps in the way.
Yeah. Hopefully NXT Europe still launches. NXT UK, you did briefly, and we'll hopefully be able to talk about
Mhm.
that, but I found that very interesting. Back, sorry to go off on a tangent. This is what the show is. I go off on tangents. I ask a million side questions because I find it interesting.